Friday night took care of my weekday blues. I woke up, had breakfast, and read the news. I'm feeling relaxed, refreshed, and renewed. But I feel like there's something I'm forgetting to do.
Hey, Toby, the show's about to start.
Oh yeah, it's a Saturday show. 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 It's a Saturday show.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Saturday Show, AADL TV's one and only Saturday morning variety show. My name is Toby. And I'm Otto. And today we're outside in the shop because we're talking all things tools.
Boy, you sure have a lot of tools, Toby.
I sure do, bud.
Well, what are you making with your tools?
Oh, thanks for asking, Otto. I always love sharing the things that I make with my tools. So I'll give you a little rundown. Ready? This right here is a bowl that I'm making for my mother-in-law. It's not done yet. I still have to do the inside, but I made this with my lathe. I'm also making these shelves over here for Stephanie so that she can put plants on them. I made those with my table saw, and one of the coolest tools that I have, it's a digital angle gauge. It makes this job really, really easy. And then the other project I'm working on is this guitar here.
Guitar?
Yeah, you heard me right. But let's hold up 1 second. Let's see what the word of the day is first.
Hey, Kashi, how you doing?
Oh, hi.
What are you up to in there?
Well, I'm floating around in this beautiful piece of tulle.
What do you mean?
Well, tulle is a kind of fabric that's kind of soft and floaty, like this.
You tricked me. That's awesome. This episode today is all about tools.
Oh, tools. Oh, my goodness. You mean like hammers and screwdrivers?
That's right. And you know, I brought one of my favorite tools with me. This is a tool that helps you change a flat tire on a bicycle. And you know, I use that a lot because I get a lot of flats.
Oh, boy. Okay, I see.
Shall we see what Lexi's favorite tool is?
Sure.
Okay. Well, let's see what it is. Why,
Oh, a needle.
that's right. You know, needles have been around for some 50,000 years or more.
Wow. Well, I guess that makes sense because people have to wear clothes and they have to make them.
That's right. So people have been sewing for a long time.
Wow.
Well, listen, are you ready for the summer game code?
I am.
We're so happy to still be doing them. Here it is. It's 10 letters.
Okay.
That's a lot. It's the name of a famous Greek mathematician and inventor.
Okay.
And associated with this person is the term eureka. Also, he invented a kind of water pump that has his name.
Wow.
And he has a very famous quote. If you can give me a lever and a place to stand, I can move the world.
Gosh, that's a lot of very interesting clues.
That's right. And if you think you know the answer, you can go to play.aadl.org for big points.
Okay.
See you next time.
Bye. La 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 la.
Thanks, Kashi and Christopher.
Tell me more about this guitar, Toby. It looks really cool.
Well, Otto, right now I'm working on painting it, and when I'm done painting it, I'm going to throw a couple coats of lacquer on it to make it real shiny, and then after that, I have to do my favorite part, the thing I'm looking forward to the most, the wiring.
The wiring?
Yeah, this guitar has 2 pickups that help the sound go from the strings to the amplifier, and I've got to solder them all together to make a circuit.
That looks complicated.
Well, it can take some practice, Otto, but it involves one of my favorite tools, the soldering iron. And luckily, Nate from All Hands Active is here to give us a little rundown on how a soldering iron works.
Hi folks, welcome to All Hands Active. This is Nathan Yost, and I'm going to show you a bit about soldering today. So why is the soldering iron one of my favorite tools? Well, I like to make electronics, and the soldering iron is used to do that. It joins components together to one of these boards called a PCB using molten metal, which is pretty awesome. Let's take a look at how that's done. We'll start with this cool badge here. We're going to put this component in. Let's do it. Alright, as you can see, I put in the component here, which is known as a jumper. It's just a piece of wire. Let's go ahead and stick it on with some molten metal, huh? So first off, we're going to apply some solder. It's this wire right here. It's made out of tin and lead, although you can find some that have silver instead of lead. In any case, you probably want to wash your hands after using it. So let's melt some on this board right now. Alright, so let's use the soldering iron. It's that tip here. It gets real hot. You can see it melts almost immediately. This is about 245 degrees Celsius. So let's go ahead and stick it on there. We're just going to put this on the pad there. We're going to add a bit of solder right next to it. And you'll see that it'll flow right onto that pad. Look at that. Perfect. Let's do the other one. You only need a little bit. So now what happened is we made a good connection. This should power on right now if we hit the switch on it. Hey, look at that. It's pretty awesome, yeah? I know what you're thinking. Who uses through the hole components anymore? Modern components are all these surface mount things. Well, you can do those with the soldering iron too if you have a steady hand and a bit of patience. Let me show you. Step 1, apply some solder to one of the pads. How about this one here? Just a little bit. There you go. Step 2, move the component into position. Try to line it up as best you can. There we go. Step 3, fix the other pads on. And voila, it's on there. Once you get the hang of things, you can start going pretty fast. So that's why I think the soldering iron is a pretty cool tool, because I like to make electronics, and there's a lot of interesting things you can do with it once you learn a bit about how to solder. So if you find yourself interested by this video, maybe you want to check out how to solder too. So go online, find some fun projects to put together. You can look for solder kits, or check out your local hackerspace like All Hands Active. So that's all there is to it, folks. Soldering's not really that hard once you get started, and it doesn't require a whole lot of equipment. Electronics aren't a black box. I encourage everyone to get involved, learn something new. Stay curious, everyone. This is Nate from All Hands Active, signing off.
Thanks, Nate.
Molten metal? Pretty cool tool if you ask me, Toby.
Yep, and those secret lab PCBs look awesome. Well, Otto, did you know that some tools, like some of the ones that doctors use, can be life-saving?
That sounds right to me.
Well, Katie's going to show us a really cool tool that you can take on any outdoor adventure, and it might help you out if you get into any trouble. Here, take a look.
Hi there, I've got a tool to share with you today. It's an outdoorsy tool. It's called a Life Straw, and it's a personal water filtration system that allows you to drink from water that's outside, like from a lake or a pond or a stream. If you happen to be caught somewhere without water and you need some, this will make it safe to drink. It removes bacteria and parasites from the water so that it won't hurt you when you drink it. So let me show you how it works. It's got a little cord on it so that you don't drop it in the water when you're using it, so you can keep it fastened to yourself. And then it's got caps on either end that you take off, okay? And I don't have a pond or a stream here in my backyard, but I do have a bird bath. So I'm gonna drink from the bird bath using the life straw to show you that it works. So I'm gonna come over here and sip through my straw through the mouthpiece. Refreshing. Actually, it tastes just like water. Tastes just fine. The life straw it's not supposed to improve the taste of the water. It just takes out the bad stuff. It'll take out some sand and silt too, so the water won't be gritty if there's some sand in there. It doesn't take out salt though, so salt water is still gonna taste salty to you. This filter lasts for 1,000 gallons, and what's kind of cool about it is that when the filter is done, the straw stops working, so you can't use it if the filter is not working. When you're all done using the straw, you just blow through it to get rid of the excess water. Put the caps back on, and you're all set and refreshed.
Thanks for joining me. My name's Graham, and I've got a couple cool things here. They are made of metal, although you'll find them made of other materials also. These are just over 1 foot long, and they pivot at the bottom, like that. So, I can tell you what they're not. They're not the mandibles of a giant robot insect or a set of its wings. However, if you had such a thing and somebody wanted to know how to make their own, these would be useful in gathering the information they would need to build their own.
Ooh, I can't wait to find out what those are. They look so cool.
They do, and as a bonus, when Graham reveals what they are, he's going to show us how we can make our own.
All right then, let's keep moving. I feel like I'm in tool heaven.
Can't argue with that.
Time for another dive into mythology. Meet Thor, the Norse god associated with thunder, lightning, storms, strength, and the protection of mankind. This god's primary weapon was a tool, his hammer named Mjolnir. However, it was no ordinary hammer, but an amazing tool with magical origins. Mjolnir could magically shrink to fit inside Thor's shirt. His hammer was said to never shatter, never miss when it was thrown, and it always returned to Thor's hand like a boomerang. Thor could cast and generate lightning with Mjolnir, and the sound of thunder was said to be Thor striking his hammer. It was one of the most fearsome and powerful weapons in existence, capable of pulverizing mountains. The hammer could destroy, but also revive animals or people. It was also used to bless formal ceremonies such as marriages, births, and funerals. The origin story of Mjolnir is this. One day, Loki, a mischievous trickster and Thor's brother, snuck into the room of Thor's wife Sif and cut off her beautiful golden hair. When Thor found out, he was furious and threatened Loki's life. Loki convinced Thor to allow him to go down to Svartalfheim, the underground home of the dwarves, to see if the master craftsman there could make a new head of hair for Sif. When he arrived, Loki decided to get the dwarves to do his bidding by pitting the two families against each other, the sons of Ivaldi versus the brothers Brock and Sindri. First, he went to the sons of Ivaldi and told them that the gods were holding a contest to see who was the best craftsman of them all. Each family would need to produce 3 great treasures and present them to the gods, who would choose who the winner of the contest was. The sons of Ivaldi fell for the trick and produced 3 beautiful treasures: a new head of hair for Sif, the best of all ships, and the deadliest of all spears. After the 3 treasures were forged, Loki approached their rivals, the brothers Brock and Sindri, and told them the same story. However, the brothers weren't so easily fooled. To try to convince them, Loki bet them his own head that Brock and Sindri would lose the competition. Brock and Sindri were prideful and they accepted Loki's challenge. The brothers immediately went to work. Sindri put a pig skin in the forge and told Brock to work the bellows non-stop until he returned. Loki disguised himself as a fly and bit Brock's arm, trying to make him stop working so that Loki would win the bet. However, Brock persevered and continued to work. When Sindri returned and pulled the creation out of the fire, it was a legendary boar with golden hair that could be ridden like a horse. Next, Sindri put gold in the forge and told Brock to work the bellows non-stop until he returned. Loki came again, still disguised as a fly, and bit Brock's neck twice as hard as before. However, Brock continued to work despite the pain. When Sindri returned and pulled the creation out of the fire, it was a magnificent ring. Finally, Sindri put iron in the forge and repeated his orders to Brock once more. Loki came again, still disguised as a fly, and bit Brock, this time on the eyelid so hard it drew blood. This time, Brock was forced to stop as he couldn't see and needed to wipe his eyes. When Sindri returned, he pulled Mjolnir out of the forge. The handle was shorter than Sindri had anticipated because Brock had been forced to stop working. Because the handle was short, Loki felt that he had guaranteed a victory for himself. Nevertheless, the brothers took their 3 treasures to Asgard so that the gods could judge who had won their bet against Loki. Loki ran to the halls of the gods just in time and presented the items that the sons of Ivaldi had made. Then he watched as the brothers presented the items they had made. Loki gave Sif's new hair to Thor, along with the hammer Mjolnir. He gave the ring and spear to Odin, Thor's father, and to Freyr he gave the boar and the best of all ships. The gifts forged by Brock and Sindri were judged to be even better than the ones made by the sons of Ivaldi, which meant that Loki had lost his bet. Although the gods were very happy with their gifts, they all agreed that Loki still owed his head to the brothers. However, when the dwarves approached Loki to take it, Loki pointed out that he had promised them his head, but not his neck, making them unable to remove it. Instead, the brothers sewed Loki's mouth shut so he couldn't speak anymore and returned home. Mjolnir features heavily in many of the legends and myths surrounding Thor and the other gods. If you'd like to learn more, check out our page at aadl.org/The Saturday Show for a list of books involving Thor and his magical hammer.
Hi there! Have you ever gone to get in your favorite comfortable sweatpants just to find out that the drawstring looks like this? And you're missing a side, it's lost inside your pants. What do? Well, have I got a tool for you. This here is called an easy threader. It's just a piece of plastic that's flexible and curved, and it's got an eye hole at one end, and it will help you fix all of your drawstring problems, whether it's on your favorite sweatpants or a hoodie or anything else that has a drawstring. You can re-thread the item with the drawstring. You just pull it all the way out, And then you're going to thread your easy threader with the drawstring, like so. And then you're just going to put this whole thing right into the hole where your drawstring once was. And this can be easy or a little bit more difficult depending on the size of your drawstring and the size of the hole you're jamming it into. But once you got it in there, you can sort of see that I've got it going in there, and you just sort of work it around, and having that plastic in there makes it a little bit easier to do than if you were just trying to do it by hand or with a safety pin, which is how I used to do it. So I've gotten it started, but it does take a few minutes to get all the way around. So I'm going to get that mostly completed, and then I will come back and show you when I'm right near the end. Okay, I'm getting pretty close to the end of getting my drawstring restrung. You can see one end that I'm not working with that doesn't have the eye on it is almost all the way completely inside of my sweatpants, and it's going to probably go all the way inside, and that's fine because it's about to come out the other side. I'm getting pretty close to my other hole here. Actually, right there. Let's see if you can see. So there's my one end of my needle. Actually, you can see both ends coming out of either hole. And this end that has the eye on it, I'm just going to yank on it so that my drawstring comes out. Unthread my easy threader. And then I'm just going to pull it out of my sweatpants. And there you can see that they are restored to their original glory. And I have drawstrings on my favorite sweatpants again, so I can go and relax like I intended to on this Saturday. Hope you enjoyed the easy threader and think it's cool as I do. See you later. Bye.
Hi, it's Lucy here with the final installment of Mercy Watson Goes to the Rescue. So when we left off at the end of chapter 9, the Watsons' bed had just fallen through a hole in the floor, and the fire department was there and saved them just before they went through that floor. But if you'll recall, there was also a little chase going on before the bed fell through the floor. So that might be where we pick up with chapter 10. Chapter 10. Ned and Lorenzo and Mr. and Mrs. Watson all went outside. Eugenia was sitting on the ground. Her arms were wrapped around Mercy's neck. Her cheek was resting on Mercy's back. Eugenia was breathing very loudly. "This pig," she said, "was on my property." "We prefer that you did not call her a pig," said Mrs. Watson. "We would prefer that you call her a porcine wonder," said Mr. Watson. "After all, she did save us. She's a hero." "She's a pig," said Eugenia. She started to cry. "There, there, sister," said Baby. She bent over and patted Eugenia on the back. Mercy yawned. Oh, she was very tired. "I guess that's it," said Ned. "Yep," said Lorenzo. "Our work here is done." "Wait," said Mrs. Watson. "It's almost time for breakfast." "Oink," said Mercy. "That's right. Breakfast," said Mrs. Watson. She kissed the top of Mercy's head. She looked up at the firemen. "Do you boys like toast?" Chapter 11. In the Watsons' house, around the Watsons' kitchen table, sat Eugenia Lincoln and Baby Lincoln and Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson and Ned and Lorenzo. And Mercy, of course. She was at the head of the table in the seat of honor. And in front of her, on her favorite blue plate, was a very tall stack of hot, buttered toast. "A toast to mercy," said Mr. Watson, holding up his glass of orange juice. "A toast to our darling, our dear," said Mrs. Watson. "A toast to mercy," said Baby. "In my opinion," said Eugenia, "pigs should not be toasted. In my opinion, pigs do not belong at the kitchen table." "To our hero," said Mr. Watson. "Where would we be without mercy?" "Yes," said Mrs. Watson. "Who would have saved us?" "I can't imagine," said Ned. "Me neither," said Lorenzo. They all clinked glasses. Mercy had another piece of toast. Chapter 12. Outside the Watsons' house, the sun was rising. First the sun was red, and then it was orange. It rose higher and higher. Inside the Watsons' house, Mercy was lying on the couch. She was getting ready to take a nap. "Bright, bright is the morning sun," sang Mr. and Mrs. Watson together. "But brighter still is our porcine wonder." Mercy smiled. She closed her eyes. She was asleep before Mr. and Mrs. Watson even finished the song. The end. Thanks so much for listening to Mercy Watson to the Rescue.
Welcome back. These are measuring tools called calipers. This is an inside set. They're used to getting inside and measuring things. This is an outside set, so it can go around and take a measurement. So these are made to measure either odd-shaped or hard-to-get-at things that you wouldn't be able to measure directly with a tape measure or a ruler. Now there are no measurements on the tools themselves, so after you've put it around the object you wanted to measure, then you take the tips, put it against your ruler, and you can read off the measurement that way. Okay, so in a little bit I'll be back and we'll show you how to make your own set with some cardboard and a couple nuts and bolts. Okay, to make your calipers, you're going to want a couple pieces of cardboard, corrugated cardboard, about 8 by 10 inches, pencil or marker, pair of scissors. If you've got a hole punch, these work great. And then a bolt and a nut. You can use a standard nut, but if you got wing nuts, those work really well too. If you do have the hole punch, then a 1/4 inch bolt works perfectly. That's the diameter of the bolt. If you don't have the hole punch, then you can carefully punch the hole with the tip of your scissors. Alright, so we're going to start with the inside set. I took that sheet of cardboard and I cut it in half. So I took 1/2 of the cardboard, set it down into the hole punch. I got it set down so it's all the way set in the jaw. Punched the hole, and then did the same with the other piece. So I'm putting it all the way down to the bottom, punching my hole. This way the holes are the same distance from the bottom. And once I've got that done, I'm going to take one piece and starting at the end where we have the hole punched, I'm going to cut on a diagonal and tape that set down. And then I'm going to start on the other side. Do the same thing. But before I get to the end, I'm going to stop. And I'm going to come in from the other side and cut back to where I was cutting up. And that's going to make my point. So now I can take this. I'm going to use my bolt, line up the holes, and now I can trace these even on the bottom. Trace out the leg that I just cut. And now I can cut that to match. Okay, so I've got the two legs. I'm going to get them so the tips are pointing opposite of each other. If you wanted, you can trim off the ends so they're not so pointy at the bottom. So I got the bolt through. I'm going to take my nut, and then you want to tighten this just enough so that you can move the legs easily, but they will stay in that position. They aren't going to open up on you. So that's the inside set. For your outside calipers, take the other piece of cardboard. You'll want the full sheet. Starting near the top, draw a teardrop shape. Leave yourself some room at the bottom. It doesn't have to be perfect. So like that. Now, starting at the top of the tip, draw a straight line up and then follow your first curve down. As you get to the bottom, you're going to make it wider, and then come down past center and make a rounded area like that. Okay, so now you can go ahead and cut this one out. Okay, so that's one side. I'm going to take my hole punch, get it about center, and punch the hole. Now if I left myself enough room, just enough here. So same with the outside or inside calipers, got just enough room. Take the other piece, other side of the cardboard, trace it out. This way you have matched legs. Here. Okay, and I'm also going to mark where my hole is. And cut this out. Okay, I'm going to line up the punch with the mark I made from the other piece. Punch that. So I get these together. Put the bolt through. Put the nut on. Tighten it down. And then you've got your inside set. So these match up pretty good. Just like that. Alright, so have fun. Go find things to measure. And if you get bored of measuring, you got your parts. First set of parts for that giant robot insect. Bye-bye.
All right, Otto, I feel like we're nearing a tool overload.
Not me, Toby. I've been loving every minute of this.
Well then, Otto, did you know that the library has a collection of tools that you can check out with your library card?
I know that some of the music instruments we've used were from the library.
That's right, dude, but did you ever wonder how the library came to have such an amazing collection of tools?
Not really, but I'll bite. How did that happen?
Well, I was curious about it, so I contacted one of our tools librarians, Jody, and some of the folks from Ann Arbor District Library's archives to get to the bottom of this. Here, check this out.
The year was 1969. Cultural change was occurring in many areas of American life. In that year, Richard Nixon had been sworn in as the new U.S. president, the Vietnam War was at its peak, and the Woodstock Music Festival highlighted the breadth of the counterculture movement. But in Ann Arbor, the Ladies Library Association made a decision that has reverberated well into the future. In March of 1969, the Ann Arbor District Library debuted its art print collection. What does this have to do with tools, you ask? Well, in a lot of ways, the art print collection laid the groundwork for the amazing tools collection that we have at the library today. How did we go from 53 circulating art prints to synthesizers and dinosaur skulls, you may ask? Well, have I got a story for you. 30-some years later, in the early 2000s, the city government of Ann Arbor was trying to help people come up with ways to use less electricity. They thought it would be great if citizens could borrow an energy meter, and so they donated a whole bunch of them to the library. An energy meter plugs into the wall, and then you plug your stuff into it, and a small display calculates how much power you're using. It's a great way to tell if an old appliance needs too much juice and should be replaced with something more efficient, or to figure out how much coal-powered energy you waste if you leave a light on in an empty room. When the library saw how much people loved being able to borrow art prints, which had grown in number, and energy meters, we put our heads together to see what other ideas we could come up with. We asked, what are some things that people want to use, but maybe don't need to own? This is sometimes called the sharing economy, and it's an important part of what libraries are all about. You see, one of the main missions of a library is to aggregate, which means bring together, the economic power of the community and provide shared access to scarce resources.
So, one night, after a particularly long day of shelving books, a rather sleepy librarian left work, and on the way to catch the ride, they looked up at the moon and thought, "Hey, I'd sure like to get a closer look at that. I wish I had a telescope." But then they remembered that telescopes are expensive and take up a lot of storage space in a small city apartment, and wait a minute, they had the best idea for something that you might be able to borrow from the library: a telescope. We knew we'd need help if we wanted to lend a telescope, so we partnered with our friends at the University Lowbrow Astronomers Club. The Lowbrows simply love telescopes, so much so that they often build their own from scratch. There are many different kinds of telescopes, from homemade simple affairs to satellites in outer space. The Lowbrows helped us choose just the right one, which is called a Dobsonian. It's named after this guy, John Dobson. Dobson loved telescopes, but didn't like how difficult they can be to use and transport, and he really didn't like the tripods with spindly legs that people can trip over in the dark. So he set to work building a telescope that was stable and easy to use, and people loved it so much that they named it after him, the Dobsonian. Ours is small, sturdy, and easy to use, and the Lowbrows helped us perform over a dozen scientific modifications to make it even better. Once we figured out the case, which is actually a case for a euphonium, we were ready to go, and on April 27th, 2012, we threw a big star party with the Lowbrows. Everyone brought their telescopes so that all our guests could get a look at the night sky, and at the end of the night, we checked out our first 7 Ann Arbor Library telescopes. They were so popular, in fact, that there was a 2-year-long waiting list to borrow one, and so we had to add a bunch more to the collection. Today we have around 30 telescopes that you can take home for 2 weeks at a time, so there's no excuse to not stargaze whenever the night is right. We've added many more science tools over the years, including the stereo microscope, dinosaur fossil and anatomy model kits, science meters, an oscilloscope, and a metal detector. Now, the librarian that pointed us to that euphonium case for the telescope was a musician. Turns out there's a lot of musicians who work at the library, and when they saw how much everyone loved art prints and science tools, they wanted to see what a library could do to help you make your own music. The problem is, most traditional musical instruments take years of study to learn even a little. So they faced a challenge. What kind of instrument is fun to make music with, but can be enjoyed by almost everyone? Well, have you ever heard of a noise toy? A noise toy can be used to make music, but it can also be played with, almost like a music puzzle, where the fun is in figuring out how it works and making some non-traditional music or noise with it. Think less trombone and more theremin. What's that, Otto? You don't know what a theremin is? Well, it's an electronic musical instrument with no keys and no strings, and you play it by waving your hands through the thin air. And just like our telescope, it was named after its creator, Leon Theremin, who invented it in 1928. The theremin and several other noise toys launched in 2012, and for the first 2 years we mostly stuck to things that were fun to pick up and play, but that didn't require you to study music. But then something happened. We started to hear from people that they wanted more than noise toys. They wanted to experiment with new and interesting musical instruments that were more challenging to play. And so we expanded the collection to include synthesizers, drum machines, guitars, ukuleles, public address systems, and even DJ lights for parties. Although 8 years later, we still circulate the theremin because it's just so fun. So now we have tools for science and tools for music and art prints, but what if you didn't want to just hang someone else's art on your wall? Suppose you wanted to make your own. Well, if much like a quilter you've sensed a pattern here, then you'll have guessed that our next endeavor was called art tools. Problem is, most art relies heavily on consumables, things that you use up and then replace. Think ink and paper or crayons and clay. It wouldn't do to let you borrow something that you would just use up and then it went away. So we tried to think of tools that you could use with your own supplies to make something great. And that's when we thought of a sewing machine. Everyone has clothes, and fabric and thread are pretty cheap, but a good sewing machine can cost a bundle. Plus, once you've hemmed your pants or made your own drapes, you're good for a while, and then someone else can use the machine. Remember that sharing economy we were talking about? So that's what we started with. And in fact, people liked the sewing machine so much that they wanted even more tools for making things with fabric. So we added a drum carder, a spinning wheel, and a yarn winder, which will pretty much let you go from sheep to sweater, all with tools you checked out from the library. We also lend art tablets for digital doodling and drawing, and die cutter kits to help you cut out shapes for paper art creation. Now, Otto, we've been talking a lot about tools here, and maybe you're thinking, wait, these aren't tools. Where's the hammer? Where's the saw? Well, truth be told, our next collection was called Home Tools, but you'll find no hammers nor saws here. For now, at least, as there's already a couple of neighborhood businesses in town where you can rent those items. But we did want to lend some tools that you could use around your home. So we put our minds to it and came up with the thermal camera. Thermal camera is like a normal camera that takes a picture, but instead of using visible light, which generates a normal picture that we can see with our eyes, it uses a special sensor to generate a picture using infrared light, where warmer temperatures show up as more red colors and cooler temperatures show as more blue. Around the home, you can use this to check leaks in your insulation where heat might be escaping through the walls in the winter. You may also use it to verify if your dog's nose is indeed cold. You can also borrow some basic yard tools, like the uprooter, which is great for removing stubborn, invasive shrubs, or check out a projector for a fun movie night. Now, the Ann Arbor District Library still has a robust collection of books, magazines, audio, and video, but the addition and development of the tools collection has helped us to further meet the mission of providing shared access to scarce resources. And after all, isn't that what libraries are all about? Well, that'll do it for this week's episode, folks. Thanks for joining us. If you're interested in any of the things you saw in today's show, you can go to aadl.org/The Saturday Show for more information and resources. And if you'd like to write us a letter, you can email tss@aadl.org. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, bye!